Hi everyone. Ja, dan nog in beeld. Hi everyone. Let's see. I'm presuming you can all hear me. It's odd because this is a Zoom webinar function, which means I cannot see you. I can see you're here. I know you're here. I trust that you're here, but I can't see your responses. So your weird looking faces, like, what is she saying? Anyway, for those of you who only know me online or who haven't met me, my name is Floor Kaspers. I am from the Netherlands. I live in The Hague, and I have been working with glass for about 8 years now. Who is sitting next to me is Peter. There you go. That's Peter. Most of you who will have met me in person will have also met Peter, because for some odd reason he doesn't do glass, but he does enjoy tagging along and meeting glassy people. So that's a good thing. I think I'm very lucky that way, to have someone who is not like, oh, is it one of those people again? No, he's like, good, fun, glass people. He will also be sitting at the chat in case there's any questions and all of that. So what I've done is I've set up a series of short videos. I have a few things to show you that I have here. As you can tell, it's evening time here. It's 6:30. So we're heading to the winter, which means it's getting darker. So we've collected all the lights in this room. It's very charming. And that's how we will be able to show you things. But that also means that I won't be able to go to the studio live, because then you wouldn't be able to see anything because it's dark out there. But I have fixed that for you. So let me start by showing you how I made my first beads. That seems like a good idea. Here we go. So these are the very first beads that I ever made. What happened is I started collecting beads. I started studying the history of beads, writing about beads, and I kept thinking, so how are these beads actually made? How do you make a glass bead? So I took together actually with my mum and my mother-in-law, we took a 2-hour class in how to make a glass bead. And obviously I was hooked from the start. For those of you who look at these beads and are like, that's weird, there's a Millefiori glass bead in there. Yes, that is weird. What happened is I had some antique little bits of Millefiori cane. So that's the bead on your, I'm very bad with this, on your right, yes, right hand side. I had some antique Venetian bits of Millefiori cane, Marini, and I put them on there, and I brought them with me, and I said to the teacher, okay, so I know we're just making beginner beads, but can I put these on there? And she was helpful. So even some of my first beads already had a bit of history attached to them. However, I may have started with beads, but I quickly moved on from beads. What I wanted to show you is where I make most of my glass. Which is right here. It is in my backyard, which isn't huge, but it's well kitted out. So I have put a trailer with a crane in my backyard. I think anything that you do on the internet needs kittens, and the kittens agreed. So they're in there, especially for all of you. This is all the stickers that I've collected over from the different shows and everything. So some of them may be familiar to some of you. There's some fun ones there. This is also my test, what stands up to the weather, the Dutch weather. So I do have to say, this isn't usually what my studio looks like, because I'm in between mixing things up with my oxygen and with my ventilation. And also it is much cleaner than it usually is. So I cleaned it for you. So that's what I did do. Before I will be showing you some of the videos that I'm working on, I wanted to say something about safety. As I mentioned, my setup in the studio, which you'll see in some of the videos, is not exactly completely safety proof. So do as I say, don't do as I do, because that's what you get if this is me wanting to do a slow-mo video of lighting the torch, but I let it burn too long. And that was, this didn't hurt anyone, this was just fine. So Lisa is saying in the chat that she's stubborn, that she wants a live shot in use of the, it's dark outside, Lisa. You can't see anything. So that's on safety. I know most of you in this group have experience with working with glass. Not all of you do. So to explain the extreme basics, so you kind of know what I'm doing. How you melt glass is you get rods of glass, sticks of glass, and you melt them at a torch. The torch can be either fueled by only a gas. Most people use propane, but you can use other types of glass as well. And if you want to get a hotter flame, you need a torch that burns on gas, but has the added heat of oxygen in there. And for the oxygen, you can use an oxygen concentrator, which I use, or you can use oxygen tanks. But they run out, and I don't like running out while I'm working on stuff. So that's why I use an oxygen concentrator. And I can tell you, if they fail on you and you need to get a new one and you need to get inside, they are very, very dirty, and they will mess up your workspace for you. So apart from the basics, the torch, the torch, the gas, the glass, what I use is, I have a few things that are my own personal favorite tools. So the first one is, and you can see it right here, is what it can be considered a rod warmer. It is a piece of metal, basically like a metal brick, and it allows me to put my rods of glass on there and sit them already a little bit in the flame. So the flame heats the end, because if you don't do that, if you get glass that's this type, and you put it directly into the flame, it will explode on you, it will crack. It doesn't like sudden changes in temperature. So it helps to preheat it. And I was able to get this, this is actually a really old one, it's all rusty and everything, this cast metal rod warmer, rod holder from the Czech Republic. As I mentioned before, the way I got into glass was by studying the history of glass. And one of the places where I studied the history of glass was in the Czech Republic. So I started studying the history of glass from the Czech Republic. And I'd seen their beads, and I'd seen even people making beads, but I hadn't made any of my own. But it also means that I was quite influenced, even though I'm not from the Czech Republic, and it's about a one-day drive from here. I did pick up some of their techniques, and this rod warmer is one of the techniques that I picked up there. For those who want to know, I do not know of any source where you can buy them in the US. You may get someone to cast it for you, but it is really helpful if you are like me and you make a lot of small things and you want to have your glass ready to go. The Italians use something similar. They call it a portacana, which basically means carrier of rods. So it's mostly for people who are known to doing production work, that have to work fast, that have a real big benefit of preheating their glass rods. So on to some other bits of my tools. The one I use, this is basically what I use. I have other bits because a lot of us do like to collect new tools. You always think it's a big use, but this is one of my favorites. It is a set of tungsten tweezers, which I use a lot. This is a graphite marver that has all these different sides, so I can poke and prod and roll and do whatever. And then these simple flat mashers to squish the glass. And this is another thing that I picked up from from the Czech Republic. It's what I use for my headpins. It is a wire, a Kanthal wire. For those who want to know, it is Kanthal, and you can buy it online. It's similar to nichrome wire, which means it's heat resistant. And you'll see me working on it while I'm just holding it. If you use copper headpins, the copper gets hot. And a lot of people will have something to hold a pin vise to hold it to work with. But with these, I can do it just as is because they don't conduct any heat. As I mentioned, I started making beads because I wanted to learn more about beads. But for me, quickly, it got into a whole different direction. I started making headpins. Again, a lot of the things that you will see that are made in the Czech Republic, a lot of flowers are made on headpins. So it's basically molten glass on the end of a stick. And you can do a lot with it. So quickly, as soon as I started working with headpins, I really liked it. For those of you who make beads, one of the main benefits of working with headpins is you don't have to clean your beads because they're not beads and they don't have a hole. So there's no cleaning of all the bead release. If anything I'm saying isn't clear, or you're wondering what on earth I'm talking about, or if you have any specific questions that you're interested to have me talk about, let me know in the chat or the Q&A. So working with the headpins. I started, when I first started working with headpins, I basically made jewelry with it. So I got a whole bunch of different shapes. I'm curious if maybe Karen is, I think Karen was intending to be tuning into this show. So she was in the, I think she's in the group. She has this necklace. It's made of several hundred headpins. And what I do is I cut it off, I make a little loop, and I string all the loops. So you get a very full necklace. It's not quickly done. I will, in the chat, I will type the name of the wire that I use, because that was a question from Sue. And it is one of the things that I do really recommend using that. So this is one of the pieces that I first started doing, but it quickly evolved from, okay, so I've now made them on loops. How can I make something else of it? And that's when this happened. See if I can get that one away. Wow, almost. That's when this happened. I finally found a way to make sculptures from these little headpins. It was like one of those moments where you've been thinking about wanting to do something else with those pins and wanting to make it into something bigger, wanting to make combining them, but also wanting to still have them not be too static. And also I don't really enjoy using glue with my glass work. So here's how one of the first pieces that I made, which is made to look a little bit like glass, like grass. It's sort of done. I have hollow boxes, wooden boxes that I drill little holes into. And instead of making a loop on the end of the pins, I stick them in the little hole. So that means they can still wiggle, they can still move. And also you can start working with a few bits, and then you start making it bigger. And I'll show you how I make the little grass leaves, and I'll show you how it happened that I started to make something really, really big of that. I have a question from Mark. Which gauge Kanthal wire do you prefer? So I can do inches, I can do yards, I can do feet. I do not do gauges, because gauges is a very, very silly way of measuring things. So I know Mark, he doesn't mind me saying that. So what I will use is I will use 0.4 up to 0.8 millimeter wire. If he is very smart, Peter, who is sitting next to me, might be doing the Googling on, I'm just looking at him now, he might be Googling how much 0.5, 0.4 to 0.8 millimeters is in gauges, but you can do that yourself. So it's fairly thin. For the smaller pins, I use the thinner ones, and if I need to add more glass, I will use the thicker gauge, the bigger gauge. So that's what I do. So we have Christiana, who mentions 0.4 is 26, and it might be that 0.8 is 28, but I could be wrong because, as I said, I don't do gauges. Jane wanted to know what type of base I use. I use two types of bases. One is a hollow version, and I'll where it's, so this one is basically like a wooden box that's hollow on the inside. And for some other pieces that I'll show you, I use a solid box because I don't want them to wiggle. But I do still like to be able to take them out. People can rearrange them, people can play with them, and also because for shipping and in case anything goes wrong, because they're tiny bits and it's still glass, it can be fragile. It's nice to be able to quickly replace something if it does happen to break. So here's how I make my glass leaves. These are actually bigger than the ones you showed in the picture. The ones in the picture were only about, does that actually come across? Yeah, you can see that. About 1.5 inches. These were for a project where I made a lot more. So this is my full setup. For Lisa, this is remarkably clean. But it is me working, so you're getting closer to I'm sure I have some messy pictures in there. So a question is on annealing the head pins. There's for the small ones, there's not really, the small ones on the thin wire, there's not really much point in annealing them. I usually do, but I've experimented with not doing it, and it is just absolutely fine. If I am making pieces that are a little bit bigger, like these, that are a bit bigger, these leaves, and also if I am using the thicker gauge, because there's more metal in it, the cooling down of the glass is more uneven, and then I do need to anneal it straight away. So what I usually do for my small head pins is they go into the what is called Japanese annealing bubbles, which is not actually annealing. It is it's just a way to slowly cool it down, like vermiculite. And after that, I put the whole bunch into the kiln. For the bigger pieces, I'll just leave the kiln on, and I just keep adding to them to anneal them. And another question: if the Canthal wire doesn't get hot, how does the glass stick to it? Well, the wire itself gets hot, so you need to quickly get it in the flame to a bit of glowing before I attach the glass, and you'll see that in a few more of the examples that I'll show you. But it doesn't conduct the heat, so the heat doesn't transfer from where I added the glass to my fingers, so I can get pretty close to it. Mimi wanted to know, how do I stay focused when I make so many of the same item? I think that's exactly how I stay focused. It's I can work pretty fast and pretty concentrated, and it's for some of you, you may have seen some of my beadwork. I like doing repetitive things, not in anything but my creative side. I actually prefer doing lots of new things and starting new projects, but once I have my mind set on something, I quite enjoy that repetitive action. And also I quite like to make little things and make something big out of it. For example, people tell me, how can you have so much patience to make so many of the same? And you'll see with this example when I start the video again, how many I can actually make of something. But I wouldn't have the patience to make one big bead and spend an hour. And I know some of you make beautiful big beads and you spend an hour or 2 hours on that single bead. I will have made 50 or 100 head pins in that time. And if one of mine cracks, I can just make another one. If you spent 1.5 hours on making a glass bead and then it cracks, that would break my heart. Maybe I'm just, I think we all have a different type of patience. I think that's how it works. So here we go with what happens when you make 3,000 head pins and you want to make a glass lawn. So this is a table that for an exhibit I fully covered in tiny, well, not that tiny actually, but 3,000 glass pins. And here you can also see all the holes that are drilled into it, and how we just kept adding and adding and adding. This was this took longer than we thought. I'm trying to remember. I think, how much time did we spend on making this?
About an hour, I think.
Yeah. He says we probably worked on this for about an hour. But the great part about making it like this is if you would blow on it, it would still move. You can run your hand through it and they will wiggle just like the real glass. So I really like this project, but it is a pain to set up and then have all of them. They all have to come out, they all have to be packaged carefully, and these are quite fragile because they're that long and really thin at the end, like blades of grass. But they all make it, and it's really fun to see people's response to a piece like this. So here you can see it in full in the table. And it does really look like grass. Well, it looks like my type of grass because I don't mow my lawn. See if it is going to the next one. So at first I started with a lot of those long shapes. So I would get a little bit of glass, melt it onto my head pin, and I would pull with the tungsten tweezers. I would pull a bit, I would heat or flame cut the end of it off, and I would have this usually elongated shape, or I would just make a little ball. I started making quite different shapes after I started having after I had a workshop at the ISGB gathering last year in Vegas by Patricia Larson, who was teaching us about head pins and making different types of shapes. So these are my results from that class. And it made me go into a different direction where I was like, wait, I don't have to fully rely on pulling and mashing. I can actually use different types of molds, push molds, to make my pieces. So that's what I did. And I started making mushrooms. And then what happens again is I start making these small ones out of little mushrooms. So what I've done here, some of them are just, again, like a flat piece on a head pin, which I have made a ball, and then I will push the little ball into like a dome shaped mold. For some of the other ones, I made a stem first and then added another color on top, pushed it in a little dome mold. But I also made some of the more pointier shapes, which for someone like me, because I didn't know how, it was a big difference to work actually with those push molds to get a bigger variety of shapes. So here's another example of me making this actually this morning. My torch is not set up well here because I need a new oxygen machine. But as you could see, I quickly heated the end of the head pin before I added the glass. And what you can also see is because I was preheating the glass on that rod holder, it goes straight on. The end is already melted. You don't need to wave it in and out of the flame and all of that. You can just put it on there straight away. So first made a little ball, added a bit more glass, got my little mashers, made it into a bit of a mushroom stem. Made a little round. It's like, no, I'm going to get the other glass that's also preheated. Needs a bit more heat before I attach it. And then I would get a second glob on there. So none of this is very precise. None of this is to technically very difficult to do. Just get molten glass on there, because I'm going to shape it anyway into my push mold. There you go. So I have cones, I have square bits, but I usually just use the cone. So, and then because I didn't, so then I have this little mushroom shape. And then you start making a whole lot of mushrooms, because that's what happens when I do. So this is also one of the pieces that I have. I think I have one more picture of it, and then I will show you the actual piece. So I thought it would be good to show you something live as well, because no, you can't touch it from where you are, but you can get a closer look at it anyway. So again, I keep reusing furniture. Let's get this one out of the way. I keep reusing my furniture. So this was actually my bedside table, but hey, who cares? It's all for art, isn't it? So you can see again, like the glass, these are all loose in there. I can pick them up. I can do like this. Only I get to do that. And this is what it looks like. There's hundreds and hundreds in there, all different shapes, all different colors. Whenever I never remember which colors I actually use. I just get a whole bunch and I see how they work together. This is almost like painting. I like to do both my beadwork and my glass work similar to painting. So get a good look at that one. I am putting it back. And I get to take a seat again. And I will show you some more from here. So let's see what I had come up with next. So another shape that I started working with a little bit earlier than these mushrooms actually are lichen. And they are a lot of fun to make and a lot of fun to work with. So they are little shapes like this, where again, I've drilled holes and then I put the little lichen in there. So here's again me making a head pin, but then in this lichen shape. So get the glass, melt the little end, get the glass on there. Make sure that you can't see what I'm doing because the marver is in the way. Okay, I have to say something funny. Some of these videos were made by a good setup and everything. I know how this video is made. This is what I would like to consider a boob video. So I'm going to pause it because that's going to get you all distracted. So if you have an iPhone and you have boobs like me, you can stick your iPhone in between your boobs, have it kind of resting on your bra, and then make your own little video using like that. So that is my very special trick. And I do realize that I said I am recording this and that I will be putting this online, but hey, who doesn't need a trick like this? If you want to film your own videos of you beading, of you making glass, just stick an iPhone in between your boobs. So I flatten the end and then I squish all the little bits with my masher, and then I get the base shape. And what I do here is I melt it all the way around, so the outside kind of curves inwards, and that's how I get that lichen shape. And I really enjoy this, making this shape. And as you can see, it's pretty fast. So here's another interesting story, and I think it fits in with the theme of the boobs. When I in what I would like to say the early Corona, early COVID period, things went very fast in the Netherlands, and quickly a lot of people lost their loved ones. So what I decided to do is make a chair out of and have it resemble that empty chair at the kitchen table that is overgrown with lichen. And for me, it was an important piece. There's a lot of lichen on there, a lot of pins. It took a lot of work, and it was my way also of dealing with what's going on around us. However, when I posted it online, and at the moment, because of COVID, that's pretty much the only way you get to share your art. I put it online, and then people started seeing something that I did not see. People started thinking that I was having these lichen, because there were so many colorful colors, look like condoms. So there I was at home with this emotional, heartfelt piece, and people are like, why did you put condoms on that chair? So this was my my good lesson in, you can make something, you can make it with all the right intentions, but people are always going to think it's something dirty. I don't know. I do have to say it was mostly Americans who thought they looked like condoms. And there's a lot of jokes that I could go into with that on size, because these are tiny little lichen, but I will ignore that. I will show you the full piece though. So here we go. So this is again me repurposing one of my pieces of furniture. This was one of the chairs that I had actually been using. So the lichen starts right there, and then it moves up. These are not glued in, so some of them might fall off, and it goes onto the face of it, and then the lichen crawls up here, goes around the back, and goes all the way to the top. So that was my my lichen inspired chair, which I like to call the empty chair. Here we go, put that down. So we have different reasons as to why there was a confusion with why this reminds other people of different things. But I do quite, at first, yeah, it was annoying. I'm not going to lie. But then again, it is, people look with a different eye. And I think it teaches you that if you want to make sure that a certain message comes across, you better make it very, very obvious. And if you want it to be open to interpretation, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get it so that it's open to interpretation. I am going to see for a minute where I was going. We had the lichen, and okay, so we have a question on how my drilling holes into furniture. I just kind of do. I started with these small open boxes that I just bought for some of the other pieces, like the small mushroom pieces. As I mentioned, the ones that still have to wiggle, they are hollow, so the pieces move. For those that need to stand upright, and they I use solid pieces of wood. So here I just went to a wood shop and I asked them to cut it to size, so little little cubes, and then drilled into them, and then put my pieces in. It does make for interesting experiences at shows sometimes. I've had one piece that had a lot of loose pins in them, and then someone was like, oh, how does the other side looks? So that happens. I've also had people come up, because I know, for example, some of you, they sell beautiful individual head pins, and then people would come up to my booth next, and they are like, oh, I would like this head pin and this head pin. I'm like, no, it's art, it's a sculpture, it's finished. So it does have some interesting experiences when you're live at a show. When it comes to, I use for those who really are interested in how I do the drilling, I use a variation of a Dremel. I use a Proxon, which is, I think, a German brand that just allows me to drill and have fun with it. I've actually done, I don't have a picture of it here, but I can show it to you later. I've actually done an old adding machine where I've drilled holes into and used that to put, again, some overgrowing lichen and pods on it. So it's something that you can experiment with. And I've also done books. Books really lend themselves well for this too. So you just drill a bunch of holes in books and you stick your pins in there to create something maybe with a bit more substance. So there's a few of my of the techniques for drilling. So what I'll usually do is I will start with a flat piece of what's it called? Piepschuim. Styrofoam. I'll start with a piece of styrofoam and I will be sticking my head pins in there to get an idea of how spaced out they need to be. And once I've decided on how spaced out they need to be, then I start drilling holes. And then usually I realize, oh dear, this project has already gotten much bigger than I intended it to be because I have so many holes and now I better go and fill it. So usually with these big projects, I'm like 2/3 of the way. And then I'm like, no, why am I doing this? And then I push through. And when it's finally finished, usually I'm happy with it. So we have a few more questions. Somebody asked if they need to buy me furniture. I have so much. I have a fair amount of furniture that I don't use on a daily basis. I live alone in my house. Peter has his own place in Amsterdam. My neighbors actually live in this house with 2 adults and 2 young adults. And I think I use up just as much space with me and my stuff. I blame the artist side of me. So there you go. We kind of need to. But yeah, I do need a new table. That grass lawn was actually one of the tables that I was using. But the deadline was coming up and I'm usually too late. So I just used one of my IKEA tables that I happen to have. So from speaking of furniture and drilling holes in furniture, we are going to go to something fairly different, which is the making of something that I've been working on quite recently. I think, yeah, we have the figures. I used to make more stylized images, nature inspired, but again, this COVID virus does sometimes make your mind go in different directions. So I think for the first time ever, I've been making actual figurines, little figures. But I did still stay true to what I usually do, just make a whole bunch of them, match up the colors and see how it works. So what I've done here, it's, I actually have it here, so we'll get that for you. So this is the actual piece. And again, they're still loose in there. So the idea of this was in the center, everybody's close together and then they start spreading out, getting more distanced from each other. And this is done in a similar way. So all of these are loose and they have their individual little hole where they fit into. I had a question on if there's any issue with the structural integrity of a piece when I start drilling into it. I like to make very tight drill holes. So when I have the 0.8 millimeter, so most of what I do now is on, because they're bigger, is on 0.8 millimeter wire. That means I will drill a 0.9 or a 1 millimeter hole. And that means I'm not drilling huge holes into my furniture. They're generally quite small, and that makes sure that everything is going to sit in there nicely. However, for the grass lawn, when I wanted to move, I would have 2 millimeter holes, because then they really have a lot more room to wiggle. And before we go to another picture, is Here is another piece that is again inspired by the concept of distancing. It's different colors, a bit more cheerful, and I'm thinking of making a larger series of this one, because I do quite like how this turned out. I had another question is, am I ever unhappy with a finished piece? No, I only make perfect pieces. It's just, that's what happens. No, yes, I have a fair amount of pieces that I'm not happy with or that are unfinished. Not so much with the headpins though. Usually when I have an idea there, it sits in my mind for a while, and by the time I get to executing it, I pretty much know what I want. And because there's different stages in between of me matching the colors, sizing it up, making a small example and then make it bigger, then it usually does work out. So for those, however, when I work, all of this is what we call, as glassmakers, glass workers use soft glass because it has all these different colors. Whenever I work in borosilicate glass, I don't work with the colors and I make more structural pieces. That is more for me experimenting, seeing where it goes, and I have a lot of unfinished pieces of that lying around. And I do have some like leftover pins that I might repurpose at one point, but generally when I have a big project like this, I do a tester first, like a small one, and then I'll know if it works, and then I'll move forward. Sue wanted to see if the concept of the behind the wood piece with people-like figurines. Basically, the concept is it has to do with social distancing. So people now, because of the COVID virus, having the need to get further and further away from each other, even though a natural tendency is to get closer and closer. So you can see these pieces, for example, a piece like this, you can see it in two ways. In the middle, it's very busy, and here people are more spaced out. You can see it in the sense that at the moment, we started here and people need to space out more, but you could also see it as a timeline going back where we may be ahead of time, hopefully soon, where people can come together again, get closer to each other again. So it's kind of, you can look at it optimistically, you can look at it pessimistically, depending on what your current state of mind is. So I think, I know, I'm still fairly, at the moment in the Netherlands, we're not doing very well. So I'm a little bit still in the pessimistic stage, but they'll go away. We'll get there. There's one more technical expert, and then I will show one more technical question, and then I will head on to one of my other final projects. So the question about the wire. The question is, where do you get your wire, and do you get the wire straight? How do you get the wire straight? So first of all, you can do all of this with nichrome wire, with copper wire. Some people actually use, if they want to make headpins that they use for jewelry, they use silver wire. So you don't need the Kanthal wire, it's just what I use. And I am very fortunate to be able to buy it straight. So mine comes in straight pieces. As you could see at the one of the earliest bits of video where I had my favorite tools, I had like this glass filled with long sticks of Kanthal wire. So that's how it is sold in the Czech Republic, and I bought it directly from the Czech Republic. What I will do later on is, I don't have it with you right now, I will send you the information for that Czech supplier, but they pretty much are only selling wholesale, so you need to send them an email, and then they will probably send you a kilo, which is a little over £2. And then you'll have a lot. I have been told by people that if you look out for it, that on Amazon you can buy already straight cut pieces of Kenthal wire. Some of it is used as well as nichrome wire for people who do like e-cigarettes or make e-cigarettes, or who do other types of electronic stuff, because it is so resistant to heat resistant, so it doesn't conduct the heat. So I buy it straight, and that means I can basically use it as if it was a mandrel, which I enjoy. So there we go. Share screen, there we are. So we were on to the figurines, is what I was showing you. That's the piece I showed you live. This is a close-up, because it's always fun to look at a close-up. And here's my project that I started actually more than a year ago. It is little glass pebbles. And I wanted to end with this piece because it really tells a story of my glass journey. When my very first start in working with jewelry, making jewelry, trying on new things, was when I was on a beach on the Greek island of Lesbos. And I was picking up these beautiful pebbles from the beach, and I started thinking, how can I make them into jewelry? So I started making them into jewelry by wrapping them, drilling them, wanting to learn more skills to make jewelry, started doing silversmithing, wanted to add beads to them to make it into more fuller necklaces. And that's how this whole thing started, with me and the little beautiful pebbles on the beach. So at one point I thought, I want to see if I can make pebbles into glass. There's other people who make stone-like glass, and actually glass is used, has been used throughout history to mimic stones, precious stones. But I wanted to mimic the non-precious stones, just the pebbles that you would find on the beach, on a path. And these are not beads, these are just pebbles. They look like pebbles, they kind of feel like pebbles. And I have made lots of them. And I will show you how I make them, and then I will show you the type of art project that I create with it. So again, melting. So what we do here is I melt a glob of glass. I would say about, I don't know, trying to think of a similar, like a small cherry, well, pretty small cherry, like a small cherry or a big chickpea, really big chickpea. Depends, they are all quite different sizes. So what I do is I melt a gather of glass, and then if I want to do a stripe on it, but I do all different things on it, I can use frit on it, I can use shards on it, and then I melt it in, which this is a perfect view of you. You see no, you just see a big piece of heat. So I squash it with my little marver. I melt out the rings. When you flatten the piece of glass that's so hot, it gets these rings from shrinking in it, and I kind of try to melt those out. I get a very thin, I'm going to pause it right here. I get a very thin mandrel, basically a metal stick, and I use that as a punty. So I will attach that so I can clean up the other side. So take off from the other end, put that on my little rod thing, change hands. There's a lot of changing hands I feel in making these pebbles. Squish it again so the end bit where I removed the rod is similar. Melt out any tool marks again. So then I have the full-on pebble, and I get my tweezers, I tap it off, and then I melt out the little punty mark. After I've done this, I make a whole bunch more, and I have and I etch them. So I've done 2 methods. I've both acid etched them, and I have done them in a tumbler. And oddly enough, it kind of surprised me, because I thought, you know, pebbles in the sand and everything. I do like the effect more from the etching than I like from the tumbling for this one. I think the etching, especially if you leave it in a little bit longer, gets them gets a bit more of that sometimes uneven wear that pebbles have. So that's what I do. And then, as with pretty much everything in glass, what I make one, and then I make a whole bunch of them. And if you thought that wasn't enough, you just go and make even more. So here's a video where you can see, and I really like this project. I like it because it is completely and totally useless. I still haven't decided what I'm going to do with them. I'm thinking that at one point, once I feel I have enough, they should be spread around the world. They should be spread to friends. The idea of throwing a little pebble into the water that all make a little splash, and together a lot of little splashes make a big wave. So there's thoughts on where this will go, but I haven't decided yet, and I just keep making more. I keep giving them different textures, different shapes, and they are just fun to make, fun to play with. And I've sometimes gotten confused. So I'll have some of my pebbles still from Greece, and I'm like, wait, is this a pebble or is this a glass pebble? So that is that's what I make with the pebbles. I wanted to show you what all these pebbles look up. Whoa. So these are, and I'm going to tilt the screen so you can see what that looks like. These are actually these are 1,024 pebbles. Maybe I should make a whole path of them, but they are just so much fun to play. And again, absolutely useless, like all good art should be. And then here is another set that I'm working on. So these are not etched yet. So this is another box of 500 unetched. But I will also be etching these. They will all be going into the same box. So the etching, and I'll get back into so you can actually see me. The etching solution I use is, I think I've used different ones, and I think they kind of all work. I think I now use Etch All, and I just dunk all of them in there. I actually use that same plastic box. I'll put it about half full, put the etching solution in there, wait a few minutes, stir, give it another few minutes, stir, and then I do that a few times so there's no shiny spots on it anymore. And then I will filter out the solution, and I will keep the pebbles and make them clean so that they are safe to use and play with and touch. So this was kind of what I wanted to share with you. Do you have any specific questions left? So do let me know. What is in the cardboard boxes behind me? That's a secret. No, in the cardboard boxes behind me is a lot of it is beads. So a friend of mine, I don't know if he's joined us, Hans, he is my fellow bead researcher, and he has the best organized bead collection ever. So I thought I should follow his lead. And most of his bead collection is in these catalogued cardboard boxes. So I thought I will get these boxes, and then organization skills will happen automatically. Well, it didn't, of course, but what it did happen is that I noticed that having boxes is really, really practical for a lot of stuff. So there's not so much my collectible beads in there, even though some of them are, but I have boxes that say tape, because I can never find tape when I do. So I have boxes that say scissors. But I also have boxes, I'm looking in front of me because I have boxes here, I also have boxes there, and I also have boxes there and there. They're everywhere. But some of them say hollow spikes, so they're for hollow artwork, and I have some left over. One of them says backup head pins, boro, as in borosilicate glass, in progress, textiles from Japan. I have 2 boxes of those. I think it's time to open those up again. I have silver clay. I have I mean, you get the idea. So this is me, and it actually does work like that. This is me not losing my stuff, or actually being able to find my stuff sooner again, but it has pretty much everything in there. What I'm going to do for those of you who feel like you're not done talking yet, I will be posting a link to another Zoom meeting where I can't do that from this, where I can put you into little groups. I can put you into breakout rooms where you can chat with some of the people. You get randomly thrown in, and I'll be going around the different groups to talk with each other and chat a little bit more. So the link, I've just put that in the chat room. I will be closing this session in a bit. So do either click on that link, which may not have been working completely yet, or just copy it and then paste it so you can use it. It is also in the email for those of you who signed up earlier by email. The link is also in there. And the recording, I haven't decided. I have to do some editing on the recording at the moment. I'm very busy, so it'll probably be at least a week before I will put on the put the recording on somewhere. But I will for sure let you know. And of course, some people know me for my beadwork, and yes, I do have it here, and I do want to show you. You are pretty much the first people who get to see it live. So this is it's made of 505 little pieces, little beadwork pieces like this, which I've all connected to give this fascinating, I knew a little bit of how this was going to work, but because the shapes are so odd, it started curling, and I wasn't expecting it to curl up on itself, but it did, and it feels really nice. So I'm hoping you get a sense of the texture and how it sparkles and how it shows all these different colors. So yeah, that is my Wings of the Fall piece. Somebody asked if you need to vote on it. No, you don't need to vote on it, because there's a jury who will decide what wins and what doesn't win. But no matter if I win, I'm happy with this one. I like it. Anyway, I am going to be closing this. If you did want to continue chatting, then do go to the other meeting that I will start up in a minute or 2. So it was fun to have you all here, even though I couldn't see you, but you could see me. I will be able to see you in the little groups. But if you have other stuff to do, go do other stuff. And I hope to see you again sometime soon. Thank you so much for joining me. That was fun.